Meeting with the team here in the city of Greater Dandenong to learn about how we can move much more efficiently on Mars. What do we need to do to have a sustainable transport system on another planet? So we can learn some stuff here today on this planet in the city of Greater Dandenong to work out how it is that we can move people efficiently. And so you can hear things moving efficiently in the background. That's live TV for you. So I'm meeting with Daniel from the transport and planning team here in the CGD to work out, Daniel, I mean, there's over, what, 170,000 people live in this area?
Yeah.
Something like, how do we move them efficiently around town?
Well, actually, it's not just moving the residents, it's also moving the people that come to Dandenong for employment as well. So we have a national employment cluster in Dandenong South, which is a major attractor of employment.
Yeah.
And it's not from just our residents, but from people in surrounding and even further municipalities. And the way we do that is by giving them transport choice. Okay, so
transport.
A lot of people immediately default to the private vehicle, but in our residential catchment, there are cultures and people with lower socioeconomics that maybe not can have own a first car or even a second car and need to rely on other transport modes such as walking, cycling and public transport, and the more disruptive transport such as ride sharing like Uber and so forth in more recent times.
Yeah, okay, so we've got really interesting transport decisions here that we have options for in the city of Greater Dandenong. So you talked about ride share and so on, and people come in here for work as well as live here. How do we, I mean, things are changing in the city, aren't they? So how do you make plans for that? How do you work out what we need to do next?
Oh, okay, it's all about data.
Data,
yeah,
love data.
And in more modern times, again, the access to data that we have is increasing. So
yeah.
A lot of people own mobile phones, and we're able to access data from the mobile phones to track, I guess, people's movements. Now, that's all anonymously, so no one needs to worry and put their tin hats on or anything like that. And also we have things just recently council implemented, for instance, in central Dandenong here, parking sensors within all our on-street parking bays. And that gives us real-time information about which parks are available, car parks are available, how long people are staying for, and that data will build up over a period of time and show us trends and patterns for which we can then make decisions about are we using the space efficiently and effectively.
So what do we do with that sort of information? Like you've got that information on, say, because parking is always I know when I try and get to the shops, to get a park near the shops is really hard. Well, what have we got?
Look, ideally, everyone would want to park directly at the front of where they want to go, but that's just not a reality. Yeah. So what we can do though is this is just the first step of several in which we get the data. Soon we're going to implement in the future signage that will be real time, so that as people drive into the city and they're moving about, it will be able to direct them to say, you might see it in many shopping centres now already, it might say if you go this way there's 157 parking spaces and this way there's only 12. Well, then that gives information to the driver to be able to make that decision. But if we're just going to focus on parking, I'd want to draw us back to say, well, that's one mode of transport, but a lot of people still move about through public transport within the city of Greater Dandenong. And in Dandenong South in particular, we don't have very good public transport networks at this moment, but we are looking at implementing an on-demand bus service, which has been successfully trialled in New South Wales and in South Australia. So from Dandenong Railway Station into Dandenong South, it will give employment opportunities for people who may not be able to drive, especially, say, young apprentices and so forth, who don't own a vehicle and need to be able to access these work opportunities.
So now how does an on-demand bus service work? Like what have you seen from the other places? Okay,
well, it's not too dissimilar to Uber Share in a way, but on a slightly larger scale. So as people arrive at the station, they may say, yep, I want to travel to Dandenong South, and they just log in on an app. I'm presuming it will be an app run by the company that will organise it. And once it gets a small number, say 6 or so or more people that want to travel in roughly the same direction, a small bus will appear and be able to shuttle them down there, and then it will be able to come back or pick up other people on the way back via this app as well, particularly in the afternoon when people want to return from places of work to public transport opportunities.
That's a fantastic idea, and I think about that like on Mars in the future. Like the early days, the settlements will be going to be pretty small.
Yep.
They'll have like the first crew that's planned is going to be about 4 or 6, and then it'll be 8, 12, etc. It'll be a long time before we've got 170,000 people like you have here in the city of Greater Dandenong. So thinking about these sorts of things now for the future is going to be really important. What are some of the things you think that will be one of our main priorities there when it comes to how we think about this for tomorrow?
Well, transport's a derived demand. Very few people jump into their car or get on public transport, like on a tram or a bus or a train, just for fun. You know, just what they enjoy doing. Some people do, but not many people do.
My dad used to do that when he
the old
retired.
Sunday drive or something. But that's going to the wayside now. It's a derived demand. It's in people are using transport services to do something else, to get from home to work, to school, to recreation activities. So it's a derived demand. So in Mars, for instance, it's all about land use planning. You want to make sure people hopefully live close to where they work and where they play. For instance, the example I'll use is you don't want to have your bathroom facilities on Mars located a 5-minute rover drive away from where your habitat is. Okay, so is that a transport problem or is that a land use planning problem? So if you make sure you have your land use planning correct, the transport should follow. And then as you move forward and you do develop to 170,000 as a colony, then that's when you want to make sure you have transport options and flexibility in the systems, so that if something does fail, one of the systems fails, you have alternative modes. Unfortunately, in Melbourne, as you may be aware, nearly every other day, the West Gate will be blocked up due to a broken down truck or a minor accident, and it can cause massive disruptions because we don't necessarily have the choices available for people to take other routes to get around them. And if they do, those other routes get congested very quickly.
And you talk about getting around, and then that's, you know, I know in Melbourne there's talk about like a big circular sort of system that goes around, like
a ring road.
A ring road, and there's a train,
an orbital route.
Yeah, so the idea, like I can imagine on Mars over time, the city will get bigger and bigger and bigger, and if we don't plan for it, we might be stuck by, you know, without having the ability to get from one end to the other, but having to go through the middle.
Well, that's right. A lot of our networks, like if you look at in Melbourne, the freeway network is very radial, as is the rail network. It goes from the centre of the city of Melbourne and then radiates out, like spokes on a wheel. And what they're looking at doing, though, with the completion of the ring road on the northeast link, which they're currently under construction, that will help build a ring road around. So very few people actually go from the far outer suburbs into the city to work. For instance, I believe it's only about 3% from Cardinia that go into the Shire of Cardinia that go into the city to work, but they do work in neighbouring municipalities. So they may not have the rail network that gets them to the city, but doesn't get them north or south, around. So the government is looking at those radial plans. But again, you want to make sure though you have people living close to where they work, and the idea of a 20-minute city, and a polycentric city. So although the centre of Melbourne is the CBD, ideally you would have other centres, of which Dandenong South is an employment cluster situated around, so many centres, polycentric, and thus people can live closer to where they need to work, and it's not all just about going into the city. And that's a historic reason that the city developed first and then grew out from there. So with Mars, though, you have the opportunity to not make those same mistakes and build a centre, but then start building another centre and then building another centre, and not just keep radiating out.
Let's be smart and have that almost like an orbital sort of perspective of stuff.
Correct.
I love that idea. And but that does make me think a little bit about what we do have, like our transport. We have a lot of people, and see lots of cars even on today moving around here in the city of Greater Dandenong. We use our cars a lot, don't we, to get around. Are there some things we can do just every day today, even though we're building great infrastructure here and supporting transport from work to home and vice versa, that we can reduce how much we need to use our cars?
Definitely. Well, the City of Greater Dandenong invests quite heavily in improving our cycling and footway pathways. So to give what we call active travel modes. So people can cycle to other places for recreation rather than have to get into the car and drive. And ideally, we don't want to have the people have the second car, need to get the second car. So we do have areas where the public transport network is not that great. Essentially, it doesn't run frequently, and it probably doesn't even go into some areas. And that can create some social isolation issues for our residents. And that's something that's also important. So transport's not just about moving people and goods and doing it safely. There's many other factors involved, such as emissions, which we've talked about, such as social isolation, advertising that people are exposed to along routes and so forth. There's so many factors that are involved in transportation. It's not just about movement and safety.
From A to B. So much to think about. Look, thank you so much, Daniel. I've got a lot to take away with me to think about for planning a sustainable transport system on Mars. I mean, I'm not a transport planner, but I'm probably going to be working with some people who are. So I might be able to ask the right sort of questions. Are we thinking about how we can get from A to B? Are we living close enough to where we're working? Have we planned things in such a way that we don't need to have these multiple sites, but we can actually be connected across the system? And do we have the sort of active transport systems in place as well to support connectedness as well that allows for less emissions? There's a lot of stuff we can learn here from the City of Greater Dandenong. So thanks again, Daniel.
You're welcome.
Guys, have a fantastic day today. I'm sure we'll hear a lot about some e-bikes and e-scooters, a lot of really cool technology that's going on right here in your town. Catch you soon.